Yes, good afternoon, everyone. This is Mr. Additional on the line. As we have started the class for this day, so I want us to quickly to uh, another chapter of the syllabus, which is the historical and the legal background of the taxation in Nigeria. I mean, historical and the legal background of taxation in Nigeria. So, as we have discussed what taxation is all about, the importance of taxations and the types of taxations. Now, when we are talking of the historical background and the legal background of the taxation in Nigeria, due to income tax that was formally introduced in 1904 during the era of Lord Lugard in the northern part of Nigeria, in fourth community tax. So the Native Revenue Ordinance of 1917 was later amended in 1918. So to incorporate southern Nigeria. So the Native Revenue Ordinance of 1917, 1918, and 28 were later incorporated in the Direct Taxation Ordinance. So this ordinance was discriminatory as it applies to native in Nigeria, elsewhere than the township of Lagos. But in the northern part of Nigeria, they have a definite form of taxations that could be identified. And the system of taxation was far more definite, organized, and established than anywhere else in the country. I mean, in Nigeria. Specifically, the following form of taxation was recognized in the northern part of Nigeria. That is what we talk of the zakat. Zakat, yes, is a tax that is levied on the Muslims' charitables, religious, and education purpose. So there is another one we call it Godin Kaza. So this was an agricultural tax that can be compared to the land rent. So the only difference is that the tax is payable for the use of landed property for the agricultural purposes, and it is collected by Dongari. And the Dongari in the northern part, as at that time, was comparable to the modern day police in Nigeria of today, but they are essentially errand boy for the emirs. Are we getting it? So that is another form of taxation practice in the northern are shuka payable on the crops, not liable to taxation or to zakat. So now we now have Western Nigeria now. When we're talking of the land of Western Nigeria, they are the most popular tax or taxes that identify in the southwest area of Nigeria, which was tribute tax, and it could be taken in form of isakole, as Yoruba usually call it, isakole. What does that mean? When we are talking of isakole, isakole is a form of tax that is levied on the land used by the local community, who are normally expected to pay to the local chief. Just for instance, now, if a community is considerable to be the superior to the other adjoining one, so they are expected to regularly pay a kind of isakole to the king. So this isakole, and it's a form of taxation, and it could be in a monetary form or a non-monetary form. And when we are talking of this non-monetary form element, it involves like a gallon of palm oil, tubers of yams, corns, certain tons of corns or basket of tons. Sometimes it may even involve the donation of women to the kings. That is what they mean by Isakole. Then another one is Owori. This Owori sometimes it is general, irrespective of the religion. Of course, the so-called Owori is not only meant for the Muslim only, but it is general, be Muslim, Christians, or the pagans. So it's a compulsory on an individual. Why Isakole is payable by community? So to the superior king, and Owori is payable by an individual. So anybody that has attained the age of 18 and above is meant to pay Owori. So Eastern Nigeria now, this the tax in the eastern part of the country is just in the pre-colonial era were not as definite as that of the northern and western Nigeria because of their own culture. So the following forms were recognized. We call it Eguku. So this Eguku is a compulsory and it is payable before the harvesting of palm oil because they all believe that the palm trees belongs to the community collectively. So before any farmers has to harvest the oil, he has to pay Eguku. So that is payable to the community. Now, there is another one, we call it community effort. This levy or compulsory contributions from an individual to the community purse. So it is normally collected for a specific purpose. Now, what are the legal framework on the Direct Taxation Ordinance of 1940? Yes, the Direct Taxation Ordinance can at the same time be regarded as a definite legal framework for the Nigerian taxation system. In 1940, which can be regarded as a turning point as income tax ordinance was also enacted in that year. So this tax ordinance still allowed the regional authority to levy the tax indiscriminately. So the expatriates were not even taxed at the regional level, but they were to pay taxes only in the colony of Lagos. Now, there is what you call tax legislation. When we are talking of the tax legislation, we are talking of the law that attached to the tax in the country. So since 1961, when the Tax Management Act and Income Tax Act were promulgated, promulgations of the act or decree can at the same time be related to that of the legislation we are talking about. So there has been a further development to Nigerian tax system in particular. So the following law were enacted. The Company Income Tax Act was promulgated in 1979. That one replaced the Company Income Tax of 1906. So in 1985 rather, the Finance Miscellaneous Decree was promulgated. So this decree introduced major reform into the tax system. Since then, it has been various amendments through the tax law and budget in 1987, 90, 1991, 93, respectively. Now, considering those promulgations and the tax law, the below are the summary of the liabilities and administration. Okay, when you are talking of the personal income tax, it's a simple analysis, and that will tell us who are the responsible, who are the people, who are the agents of the government that are scheduled with the responsibility of collecting such a tax, and from whom. So the law has stipulated all these one. So if you are talking of the personal income tax, that is Decree 104 of 1993. So the personal income tax is only liable to be collected from the employees, sole estate, the trust trader, partnerships, and settlement. And it is being collected by State Board of Internal Revenue. Then there is another one, we call it CIT, that is Companies Income Tax. That one is being regulated. It's being regulated by the Company Act of, which is Limited Liabilities Company, and it is payable to the Federal Inland Revenue Services. Now there is another one, PPT, that is Petroleum Profit Tax. That one has a separate act on its own, and it was promulgated in 1990. We have Petroleum Profit Tax Act of 1990. And the company engage any company of any nature that involves in the petroleum services operations, and such a tax is payable to the federal inland revenue services. Then there is another, we call it CGT, that is capital gain tax. It is also has its own act, which was promulgated in 1990, and it is also payable by an individual and companies. Where yes, both the State Board of Internal Revenue and the Federal Inland Revenue Services are shadowed with the responsibility of collecting it. Yes, we have a value-added tax. The value-added tax decree of 102 of 1993 is been, yes, this decree is also related. When we are talking of the heart, and it is payable by an individual and company. That is value-added tax for whatever you have consumed. So it is payable and collectible by federal inland revenue. Then there is another one, we call it the education tax. Yes, we have education tax decree of decree number 7 of 1993 or 1990 rather. So that is payable by the companies on behalf of their staffs, and it is payable to or collectible by the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Yes, we have been talking of taxation. What are its importance in Nigerian system? Of course, taxation is the most important source of revenue for the various tiers of government in Nigeria, be it the federal, the state, and the local. So the personal income tax, petroleum profit tax, and the company tax account for more than 90% of the government revenue in 1970s. That is early 70s. So the citizen receive back the benefit of the tax in form of special or social amenities that are being provided by the various governments in Nigeria. That is the tiers of government, federal, state, and the local government. So especially that of the federal government, they have been able to use the taxation to either positively encourage or discourage consumption of certain goods. So it has also helped the local industry to help in this specific area by granting tax holidays and outright protective by imposing high import tariff on imported goods that can be produced locally in order to discourage the foreign product here in Nigeria. So they give a kind of tax holiday to some local industries. Specifically, the federal government in Nigeria has also used tax as a fiscal policy instrument in the following way. Yes, they use tax to manage the economy. How do that one possible? Yes, the government can grant tax concession and similar tax incentives as a means of stimulating the private enterprises in the domestic economy, that is in our local economy, especially during the economic depression, that have the effect of increasing the disposable income. So in same manner, during the inflation, government will increase the tax in order to decrease the disposable income and aggregate demand. Yes, there is another one, we call it the redistributions of incomes and wealth. Yes, government also use as a fiscal policy instrument. They use the distribution of income and wealth because citizens in any societies are not economically equal. So some are more endowed than the others. So there is a need to redistribute the income and even allow some basic amenities to be available to some individuals. Basically, this is done under the progressive tax system. So many more is normally taken from the rich than the poor. So government provides the public infrastructure such as roads, schools, hospitals, defenses that is under the securities. These facilities are of equal benefit both to the rich and the poor. And number third of that is financing the government expenditure. Yes, from whatever do through the fiscal policy, as we have earlier said rather. So they use it in order to finance the government expenditure. because apart from oil, taxation is an important source of government expenditures. So if all things being equal, expenditure would have been difficult without taxations, just like in any of the world. So another one is that of protecting infant industries. Yes, the government use tax the tax to protect the infant industries. So it is the duty of the government. It is the duty of the government in the world to protect their local industry so that economy can grow. So other countries who have developed skills in certain products may be able to export to countries with lesser skill, and make this will obviously affect the growth of the local industries. So like when we talk of the tariffs, which is the level on imports to protect the import substitutions industries. So that is that on that. Now, administrations. When we are talking of administrations and income tax law, the administration and income tax law in Nigeria, of course, whenever we want to administer the income tax law in Nigeria, so we discover that it is very, very important. It is very, very important to look at how the country or the Nigerian as a country manage their acts, or how it is being promulgated and being amended. So it is the primary functions of Personal Income Tax Decree of 1990 to coordinate and promote the unities in the application of the tax law at the federal and all the states of the federal. Now, compositions. There is something called joint tax board, GTB. So the board is headed by the executive chairman of the federal board inland revenues, who also act as the chairman of the board. And all the state of the federations must nominate a member through the commissioners responsible for the income tax, and usually the chairman of the state internal board of revenue that represent the state. So the secretary to the board, who should not be a member of board, is to be nominated by the Federal Public Service Commission. So he must be an experienced senior officer in the tax matters. And another non-member should always be in attendance of joint tax board meeting, is the advisor, and the legal advisor of the Federal Inland Revenue Service occupies the position of that advisor. Now, what are their duties? The duties of this board. Yes, they are there to promote on the uniformity. Yes, they are there to promote the uniformity in the application of the tax and decree in incidence of the tax on individual throughout Nigeria or throughout the country. And at the same time, to impose its decisions matter. To impose its decision matters of procedures and interpretation of PITD of 1993 on any state of the federations for the purpose of conforming with the agreed interpretations. They are also there to exercise any other powers and duties arising under the PITD of 1993 as may be agreed by the government of each country. Then to exercise or duties conferred on it by an enactment of the federal government in respect to the tax complex income tax. So that now quorum now of joint, how do they meet up with the number of the expected members? So at least any 7 members of the board or their authorized officials will be required to form a quorum. That is, they can sit for whatever deliberation and the conclusion they want to make. Now, there is what we call the State Board of Internal Revenue. The promulgations of PITD of 1993 unifying the state income law, state income tax law in Nigeria. Yes, the State Board Internal Revenue is charged with the imposition of the personal income tax. So, having looked at that, the executive head of the State Inland Revenue Services is the chairman of State Board of Internal Revenue. So, he must be a person that is highly experienced in the tax matters and be appointed by the respective state government. Another members consist of the following. One, we have the directors and the head of department within the State Internal Revenue Service. Then an official from the State Ministry of the Finance, not below the position of directors. Then there are other persons nominated by the State Finance Commission, so on their own personal merit. So now, on their own quorum, before the quorum can be formed, there must be 5 members of the State Board of Internal Revenue, of whom one should be chairman or a director. Now, what are their functions? Their function is almost the same thing with that of the federal, but they make recommendations where appropriate to the Joint Tax Box on the tax policies, tax reform, and tax legislation. So, to treaties and exemptions as may be required. They also control the management of the state service on matter of what? The policies, subject to the provisions of the law setting up the state service. They also appoint and promote the transfer and impose discipline on the employees of the state service. Then they issue the instruction or directives on technical aspects of the assessment, including interpretation of the income tax law. Now, the technical committee of the State Board. The PITD of 1993, Section 85, they make it very mandatory for a technical committee to be constituted, and a technical committee shall comprise of the chairman of the State Board as chairman, then directors within the state service, then the legal advisor to the state, and the secretary to the of the state service. What is their duties of the technical committee? Yes, they consider all the matters that require professional and technical expertise, and they also make recommendations to the state board. They co-opt as well the additional staffs from within the state service in discharge of their duties. They also advise the state board on all its powers and duties. So that is that on that. Then the list of government approved tax in Nigeria. So the following list of taxes were approved for the various levels of government. That is the tiers of government, be it the federal, the state, and the local. And this is to avoid the problems of double taxations or identify the appropriate taxing authority. Now, there is taxes by federal government. That is CIT, that is company income tax. Then there is another one. That is withholding tax on companies. Then we also have the external affairs. Then we have the petroleum profit tax. We have the value-added tax, education tax, and the capital gain tax. All these tax, they are the tax that have been collectible by the federal government. Now, the state government tax, that is when we are talking of PIT, that is the personal income tax. I think I've said it. When we are talking of the personal income tax, that is when we can talk about the payee, pay as you earn. You pay more, you pay the more as you are earning the more. Then there is at the same time direct or self-assessment. Then withholding tax on the individual only. Then number 2 is that they also receive or they also tax capital gain tax on an individual only. Then there is stamp duty. That is instrument as executed by an individual. Then there is also pool betting, lottery, gaming, and casino tax. Then there is also road tax. This road tax, well, ordinarily it is being taken care by the federal government initially, but it is also allowed. That is sometimes they call it toll gate. So that is, then we have what they call business premises and registration levies. That one varies depending on the locations. Number one, when we talk of the as defined by each state, there is a maximum of 10,000 naira for the registration and 5,000 naira for the renewal per annum. But if it is a rural area, registration of 2,000 naira for the business premises and registration levies and renewal of 1,000 naira per annum. So then there is development levy, individual only, not more than 100 naira per annum on all the taxable individual. Then there is also naming of the street registration. If anybody wants to name the street, so it is also the tax that is being collectible by the state government. Then the right of complaint fee in the state capital. The market where state finance are involved. Then another one is local government tax. When we talk of the local government tax, they are the taxes that can be collected by the local government. However, so the type of those taxes are the shops and the kiosks. We have the shop and the kiosk rate. We have the tenement rate. We have on and off liquor license. That is where they are producing the local liquor or wine. The exploiter slab fee. The marriage and birth registration or certificate. Naming of the street registration is also for the local as well. The right of occupancy fee. This one excluding the state capitals. Then we have a motor park fee. At the same time, we have domestic animals license. Yes, when you're talking of the domestic animals license, before anybody can be allowed or could be allowed to rear domestic animal in the environment, he has to be given a license, and which is subject to the payment. So that is part of the tax that are meant to be collected by the local government. Then bicycle truck, train wheelbarrow, and cart fee other than the mechanical propeller truck. Then there is another one, we call it cattle tax, merriment and the road closures fee. Yes, if there is any party or there is a gathering that somebody wants to probably execute that require the blockage of the road, they have to pay to the purse of the local government. Then there is another one, we call it radio and televisions. Then we have road parking charges. Yes, road parking charges. You know, that one is very common in Lagos and here in Osun State as well, and I think possibly in Oyo State as well. So then public convenience, sewage, refuge, disposal fee, then customary burial ground and religious place permit, the signboard and advertisement permit. So all those ones, they are the taxes that are being collectible by the local government. Now, objections and appeal procedures. What does that mean? There might be objection if the state, federal, and the local government, they placed requisition or a notice of demand for a particular amount of money from an individual or group of people. That particular person, if not qualified to pay that, has opportunity and right to object and appeal. Now, what does that mean? There are some procedures that has to be followed because a taxpayer has the right of objections to dispute on assessment raised on him under any of the tax provisions. However, there are conditions to be satisfied before the objection can be filed. What are those conditions? It is important that notice of objections be raised within 30 days from the date of service of the notice of assessment. And the condition for a valid objections are as follows. Number one, it has to be made to the state ground of objections. And two, it must be made within the statutory time limit of the 30 days. Then it has to be in a written to the head of relevant tax authority. So once a notice of objection is validly made, an earlier assessment is automatically set aside until the objection is finally determined. So then we have revised assessment. Just a situation whereby the taxpayer has subjected the assessment. So by the time they now concluded on a particular amount, that means it has been revised. I think you get it. So the relevant tax authority will usually ask the taxpayer to furnish it with the fact and document to support the ground of the objection, the reasons why the money should not be up to that amount. So, and in practice, there is always be a reconciliation meeting that may be initiated and held between the taxpayers and the tax authority, so as to mutually resolve outstanding issues. So where issues are amicably resolved between the two parties, the revised assessment will be raised. That is, the initial assessment will be amended. That is why they call it a revised assessment. And payment must be effected on the revised assessment within 30 days upon the reception upon the receipt into the designated bank account. Now, there is something called notice of refusal to amend. Yes, this is also a notice that emanated from the tax authority. The relevant tax authority is at liberty to give a notice of refusal to amend. Like if somebody has probably discussed or submitted an allegations or objections that call for amendment or revise. So the tax authority can give a notice if the reasons is not genuine. If the ground of that objection is not genuine. So the tax authority has the right to send a notice of refusal to amend the assessment. Now, notice of appeal. Yes, if the tax relevant authority, the relevant tax authority send a notice of refusal to appeal to the taxpayer, and at the same time, that is the law, the taxpayer at the same time has the right to appeal after receiving the notice of the refusal to amend by the taxpayer. So he can also exercise the right to appeal within 30 days upon the receipt of the notice of the refusal, so as to amend. But there are certain conditions for a valid notice of appeal. Now, it has to be in a written form, and it has to come within the statutory time limit of 30 days, and with the following content clearly stated. One, name and address of the applicant, the precise grant, the actual grant or the precise grant of the appeal assessment, which shall be limited to the grant stated in the notice of objections. And at the same time, the date on which the applicant was served with notice of refusal by the relevant tax authority, so as to amend the assessment as desired. And at the same time, the official number fine, the date of the relevant notice of the assessment. Then we can also talk of the address for service of any notice of other document to be given to the applicant. So among the other ones. So Now, before we round up for today, I think we will start from the condition. No, we will start from the appeal next class. But before we move on or call it a day for today's class, so I want to give you the assignment for you to submit or not before next class. Now, discuss the concept of joint tax board. Put into considerations the Nigerian tax law. That is question number one. That is question number one. Then question number two, I said you should discuss the concept of JTB. Put into considerations the Nigerian tax law. Now, question number 1B, or no, question number 2 rather. Nigerian government use taxations. The Nigerian government use taxations to allocate, to distribute, and stabilize economy. Discuss. Nigerian government use taxation to allocate, to distribute, and to stabilize economy. Discuss. I think you have gotten the two questions. The first question says, discuss the concept of JTB, put into considerations the Nigerian tax law. And question 2, Nigerian government use taxations to allocate, to distribute, and to stabilize economy. Discuss. So this assignment is submittable to Adeka's Management Consult at Adeka's Management Consult 01 at gmail.com. Adeka's Management Consult 01 at gmail.com. So that is ADEKAZMGT Consult 01 at gmail.com. I want to believe you have gotten the address. It has to be submitted on or before next class. Adeka's Management Consult 01 at gmail.com. Adeka's Management Consult 01 at gmail.com. I think you've all seen it on the screen. So that is the address to submit the assignments to. So at least I want to believe we have a very reasonable number today. This is 151 attendees. So I want to appreciate you for your time. Thank you very much. And we shall meet next class.